Hello and welcome to Lecture 8. There are varying approaches to EMI and also to supporting students. And in EA3 I introduced different models of EMI that have been suggested. In this lecture I further examine EMI curriculum evaluation and design and also the relevance of global Englishes for EMI. I'll begin with a brief overview of the models of EMI that have been proposed and then present some examples of how a GELT perspective can be incorporated into EMI courses and programmes. I'll end this lecture with an examination of the entire curriculum, including needs analysis, aims and objectives, syllabus, methodology and curriculum evaluation. As noted in EA3, these models of EMI include the preparatory year model, the institutional support model and the pre-institutional selection model. The preparatory year model appears around the world but is very common in Turkey and Middle Eastern countries where EMI programmes are targeted at a mostly domestic student population. A global Englishes approach to language teaching within these preparatory year models would allow students to become better prepared to use English as an academic lingua franca by making them more aware of the language used as the medium of instruction and also by increasing their confidence as multilingual, legitimate users of a global language. A GELT curriculum would also presumably better prepare students for post-graduation if English was needed for future professional practice. Global Englishes research has revealed a mismatch between the language taught in the classroom and the language used outside of the classroom, and this is something that GELT seeks to address. The institutional support model tends to occur in institutions where proficiency is higher, but many students still need language support in order to study the content effectively. This model will typically involve students taking modified content courses in their early years with a large amount of support from EAP or ESP courses. Again, a GELT curriculum for language support classes would resonate well with parallel content classes. GELT itself is a type of ESP, and therefore much of the curricular ideology that underpins ESP also underpins GELT. In addition to research in different domains, Global Englishes research is also increasing in varied geographical settings, including Europe, ASEAN, China, Japan, Brazil, and South Africa. Business students studying English at a university in Korea, for example, may have different situation needs for learning English than comparable business students at a university in Mexico. The centrality of learners' needs in GELT resembles an ESP approach, where the goal of an ESP course is to prepare learners to use English in a specific context or within a specific set of tasks. Starfield notes that the ESP learner is not learning the language for general educative purposes or for the study of literature in which the language is the subject matter of the course, but rather as a means to the acquisition of some quite different body of knowledge or set of skills. GELT, or English as an International Language in Mackay's words, must recognise the various ways in which English is used within multilingual communities. Typically, these bilingual users of English have specific purposes for using English, employing their other languages to serve their many additional language needs. One purpose they all share, however, is to use English as a language of wider communication. As in ESP, needs analysis in GELT is an ongoing iterative process that continues throughout the course as practitioners learn more about their learners, their goals, and their target situations. Next, I'll present some examples of incorporating a GELT perspective into a skills-based syllabus in an EMI programme. In this example, an introductory module in an EAP course in an international business program was introduced to introduce students to the global spread and the global use of English today. Another project implemented in this program was to hire L2 English-speaking teaching assistants for increased ELF exposure in the classroom. Guest speakers who were strong role models of using English as a lingua franca in business contexts were also invited, and there was a shift in focus on communication over accuracy in the assessment. All of these steps were in response to the GELT calls for change outlined in the previous lecture. The drive to innovate this EAP curriculum was grounded in the perceived importance of English as a business lingua franca for students' future careers, and also the relevance of GELT for EMI. Here, we see how Global English's content was incorporated into the materials and the tasks, showing how GELT content can easily replace the existing general content in EAP courses. The material was still used to introduce and practice the taught skills, and therefore incorporating GELT does not necessarily need to disrupt the structure of the units, skills for example. A similar success story is described in Rose and Montacante-Wong that also describes replacing elements of an existing skills-based syllabus with Global English's content. As the authors explain, students still learn the required EAP reading skills, note-taking skills, essay writing skills, and presentation skills that underpin the curriculum. What had changed was that instead of reading a generic EAP passage for reading comprehension, we gave them adapted articles based on World Englishes and ELF literature. Instead of practicing note-taking to generic lectures, they listened to TED Talk presentations. The pre-institutional selection model runs most similarly to universities in Anglophone countries. There is usually minimal language support provided in favour of language proficiency benchmarks, such as IELTS or TOEFL. These tests are used as selection criteria for entry into the courses. This model is quite common in mature EMI contexts, such as those in the Netherlands and Northern European universities. Testing has received a lot of attention in the field of Global Englishes, and in a GELT curriculum, it is important to point out that Global English's research argues that good assessment practice must be able to make an inference about learners' future performance. Bad assessment practices occur when a test construct does not match the target language use. We have to question whether these tests are preparing students to use the language as an academic lingua franca in EMI settings. Constructs of assessment in a GELT curriculum need to focus on measuring success in communication, using ELF settings as the benchmark for the target criterion, assuming, of course, that this matches the student's language needs. GELT further emphasises the importance of assessing students' strategic competence in using the language and also in negotiating meaning. In short, GELT lobbies for a shift away from assessing learners' linguistic knowledge of English towards assessing learners' strategic use of English. Communicative assessment tasks such as role plays, written assignments, interviews, presentations and group projects are more appropriate to the criterion central to Global Englishes rather than traditional standardised tests that usually require standardised norms. So that concludes Lecture 8. In this lecture, we've reviewed the different models of EMI that have been proposed, and we've also looked at some examples of how a GELT perspective can be incorporated into different approaches to EMI. I also highlighted the importance of aligning the different elements in the curriculum, and this is something that's explored further in the next lecture. Thank you very much for watching.